Greetings and salutations, test takers. This is the Series 7 Guru coming to you from my off-grid studio, getting our kicks on a historic Route 66. In fact, Brian, I found a neon sign that I might buy to put outside my studio here. We're joined by our always very special guest, Brian Lee, a managing member of Test Geek Exam Prep LLC. He is the Test Geek. Brian is the Test Geek. I don't know if you ever get that, Brian. Sometimes I get people to say, "Hey, Dean, who's this Series 7 Guru guy?" I go, "Say more." Yes, say more. We'll take care of some housekeeping, and then we'll take care of any content questions you may have to best of our ability. You know, sometimes I tell people we are able and willing to answer their questions, Brian. And sometimes we're able but not willing. Other times we're willing, not able. But hopefully we'll be able and willing to answer all of your questions this evening you may have. As I said last week, we missed you, Brian. And I told a guy he had some acronym I never heard of it. I said, listen, if I haven't heard of it, it means it's not an issue. It's not a test issue, because if it was, I would have heard of it. If you do have a question, the format for us is put a Q, SIE. You know, it's not mandatory, but it helps us because there's a lot of content that overlaps. And it's helpful for Brian and I to decide at what depth we need to answer your question for test purposes. Let us know where you're joining us from. We're getting some international people joining us from India and Europe. So, well, maybe not. Maybe our president has caused Brian, our international audience, to decline as well. If you are looking for, yeah,
no reflection on
that. Crazy. I've been laying it in ahead of the tariff, so I've been going to Total Wine. I got stocked up on a bunch of Selection Suprema and Paradiso. I'm a tequila guy. I got myself some Familia Reserva. I bought my Lafroig and my Lagavulin, so I'm laying it all in. The guy at the wine liquor store, I go to Total Wine, was like, wow, you know, are you having a party? I go, this is not party favors. This is, you know, serious alcohol. When you come join me off grid, don't worry about it, Brian. We got plenty of good stuff.
Okay.
If you're looking for a free supplement to your paid study materials, the best free supplement is my YouTube channel. The channel is organized in series playlists. So you find your series, SIE, for example, and you'll see 3 playlists there. There's a podcast series. There's a lecture series. There's a practice test and practice questions. I think there's a 4th one I call the SIE cram course, which brings me to Brian. Brian's very good at distillation. I'm not so much. So, you know, I have 1,500 videos on there. So I do have where I call it a cram course, where there's a selection of videos that have been curated if you don't have time to watch, you know, my thousands of hours of videos. Probably easier if you just buy Brian's video content where he doesn't talk about anything that isn't testable. If you're looking for a particular topic, and Brian and I were just talking about this, please, please, please use the channel search bar. I'd be willing to bet we're more than happy, able and willing, as I said, to answer your questions. But how many times, Brian, do we get the same question over and over and over again? And if you would have put that question into my channel search bar, it would have popped up. Like accrued interest, for example. You'd find 20 different examples of me walking somebody through how to calculate accrued interest. If you're looking for a paid supplement, different beast. The best paid supplement, I think, in companion is a Kaplan Q-Bank. Kaplan has the best Q-Banks out there, mainly because of their performance tracker and the number of performance opportunities. That's what I call practice questions. If you don't have a Kaplan Q-Bank, I highly recommend you get one. That 15% discount code at checkout works on all Kaplan products and services. Brian has been kind enough to give our viewers a 20% discount on his complete video series with class notes. And most importantly, I think videos are great, but there's a practice test there that has really strong correlation. All in on Brian and the Kaplan Q-Bank, you're looking at an investment of about $150, 100 or something for Brian and 50 something for Kaplan. I realize if you're starting out SIE, maybe you don't have those resources, but as it comes to passing your exam, not a time to be frugal. If you can make the investments, do so. We have somebody in the chat. Their question was, Dean, I bought this, this, and this. And Brian, and what do you think? Is this a good idea? I think it's a wonderful idea. Make sure you don't get too many voices in your head, right? So what I mean by that is if people are doing things completely differently, you know, that might be a problem, but it's better to have abundance than scarcity for sure. On my paid booking page, everything on my YouTube channel is free. I don't sell you coffee cups or channel memberships or t-shirts or baseball caps, nothing like that. On my booking page, there's very few things that are free. But if you go to my booking page at deantenneytutoring.setmore.com, we do a Q&A jam session. I don't do it every week. I try and do it every week, but you can register for that if you'd like. I think we're doing one tomorrow, or paid office hours. I know, Brian, on my paid office hours, it says paid, they're free, but for paid students. I just look, I got 10 people in there, and I show no record of them having bought anything from me. So I have to decide, hey, did you buy anything? This is, but the jam session is for everybody. It's free for everybody. If you win the coaching call at the end, same deal. You go to the booking page, you go to the class tab, you'll see free coaching call. That you don't win tutoring at a date and time of your choosing. What you win is the ability to go to the booking page and book the coaching call you find on the class tab. We have social communities. We have our Facebook community coming up on 1,000 members, Brian, called Baby Brokers Doing Hat Tricks. Lots of testing victories, lots of things going on in the chat, lots of people forming study groups. Baby Brokers is a term of endearment for rookies in the securities industry. A hat trick is 3 successes in a short time frame. Boy, I know you're a hockey fan, Ovechkin. Can you believe that? He beat a great one.
Yeah,
the same number of games. I thought, man, that's impressive. Yep. We also have Reddit communities. For your Series 6, we have a Reddit community called R Series 6. For the SIE and 7, R Series 7. For all the NASAA exams, 63, 65, 66, R Series 66. And for all the principals exams, 9s, 10s, 24s, 57 isn't a principal, but it's there, 4's there, any of those kind of exotic kind of exams. All right, let's see what we got going on in the comments.
Let's do it.
Boom. Hi, Dean. Taking my 7 on April 19th, took my mastery, scored 98, 135. I think that's a good score. I'll take it. The mastery exam, the variance, the standard deviation. I'm trying to use terms that you may encounter on some of your exams. And the variance is a positive variance in your favor on the master exam. We would expect, not always, we would expect you to have an improvement from the mastery. So mid-70s, I think are pretty good. Live class next week. I don't know, Christopher, you're in my live class or not, but we're certainly going to be able to, if you're in my class or any class, you should be able to find a few points in class. Be aggressive when you're in class. I mean, what you wanted to get out of a class is make sure you kind of see what it looks like bookend to bookend. And then, try and, get confirmation of test issues. So make sure that work for you. I think it's a good value. When a class is done right, I think it's one of those great values. Brian's videos, that's why it's a great value. It's like a 3 or 4 day class on video. So, and you have access to Brian. So, for those of you maybe don't want to spend, I don't know what Kaplan's getting, $300-400. Brian, do you know what your competitors charge for live classes?
My competitors? No.
Well, I mean, I would think $300-400 is what I think it's
Something
going.
like that. I tell people that I think mine's the closest thing to a live class.
Yeah, there you go.
It's recorded in a classroom.
Yeah, with a whiteboard. Hi, Dean. Studying for my SIE. I have Kaplan STC. Originally purchased Brian's. I hope you use the Guru 20 discount code. I think you're in good shape. I love diversification. Key concept. Yeah. You have avoided test prep vendor selection risk.
Exactly.
Right. So I like it. To be prepared for anything. Is this wise to do? I think so. Just be careful. I just, the only thing I would comment, CT, I had a guy, he's a famous guy and relatively famous. I guess his name is David Bach. He wrote The Automatic Millionaire, but I met him when he was a baby broker and he was in one of my classes. And literally, Brian, when he came in to class, he had a looked like a backpack to go on a 3-day trip. And he had literally bought every course available.
Wow.
And I said, now, David, you realize that's the same stuff, just sliced and diced differently. Right. I would hate for you, CT, to lay your books together and you got this much stuff because you have so many vendors. Remember, it's really this much stuff. And I told you that what I love about Brian's, if you add that to your STC and your Kaplan, now you have that, what we call that distillation, right? Because Brian, if we put Brian's PDF next to those, it's going to be pretty skinny in a good way. Taking the SIE Thursday, how do I suggest you spend tomorrow? Final prepping. The execution of your study plan A is over. The timeline collapses. your study plan is kind of like an option. It's a wasting asset. Time value erodes. More importantly, tomorrow is to just keep your rhythm. You shouldn't be going down any rabbit holes tomorrow. So keeping your rhythm, maybe you do a practice quiz or something. You don't want to go completely out of rhythm, kind of like I'm an NBA fan, do a little shoot around, keep that rhythm going. Most importantly, get a good night's rest.
Right.
You need to have your reading skills in top form on Thursday. So Wednesday night, you shouldn't be doing anything other than worrying about trying to get some rest, recharging the brain housing group. So I think for all intents and purposes, your study plan is over, the execution of your study plan. Brian, your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope achievable helps reinforce where you are, what you are looking at, your goals for practice finals. Perhaps you have some other material, Kaplan, Dean's material as well, that helps reinforce that. But tomorrow, just like Dean says, you're doing a little shoot around, you're reviewing notes, you're reviewing past practice finals, and that's it, man.
Yeah.
Don't spend it
on all these exams. The days of cramming the night before and being able to pass. In college, could I pull an all-nighter?
Yeah.
And, do well?
I was just going to say, this is not college. You can't do an all-nighter.
No, that's what I'm saying. You can't. So that's why you shouldn't attempt that. Now, I realize that some of you are probably got a personality that would prevent you from relaxing the night before the exam. But, hey, do what you can to try and keep that in check if you can. Hey, Dean, I take the test tomorrow at 11. Woo, first attempt. I love it. Scoring between 95 on practice and any last-minute tips. Yes, Owen, the tips are
good night.
Be confident in the execution of your study plan. Be confident in yourself. And most importantly, tomorrow, be confident in your answers. As Brian is waving goodbye to you because he's saying you should be getting a good night's rest. And assuming, well, I know, Brian, if he's on the East Coast, that's 8:15. But what you don't want to do, Owen, is hang out with us for an hour and then, you get more confused because we have somebody here who's confused, right? Brian, you probably had the experience teaching a live class where one person's confused and it's like contagion. And then everybody who had it is they're now confused too, 69, what should you do? So, Gabriel, I have a video podcast series called You Failed. Is it over? The answer is no. It has 5 recommendations about how to respond to this misfortune. While the hurt is fresh, I'll give you the first recommendation tonight on the live stream. I want you to go print the FINRA content outline. And that FINRA content outline is going to match up perfectly with your printout. It's going to tell you in depth what area of that printout is covered. I don't know what your printout was. So, was it a 69 and all 4 functions? Did you have one function where if you fix it, you would have passed? So that's what you want to do is go through each of those sections. And what I want you to do is put a plus. Plus means you're above par passing. You don't think that's what you had a problem on. 0 means par passing. 50-50. You could we're certainly going to bring all these above par, but most importantly, we're looking for minus signs on each of those items. We're hoping there's a lot of minus signs because the minus signs are the things you think, I didn't intellectually own. I got a question. I wasn't prepared for it. And we want to work on getting it all up there, but those would be where we focus immediately. Once you get that done, excuse me. Once you get that done, refresh and reset. Brian and I had a conversation just before we started this webcast. Gabriel, I also have recommendations about how to respond with your sponsoring broker-dealer. Nobody likes whiners, and nobody likes people who blame others. So the worst thing you can do is go in there. I was telling Brian, I had a guy who I said, listen, you need to find a new community because this community is not about blaming somebody else for your fail and lack of your own accountability. We're all here to help people pass the exam. I didn't say this to him, Brian. I said, I hope you didn't say to us in the community what you said to your manager, because if that's what you would have said, I'd say, well, why am I going to sponsor this guy again? We learn a lot, Gabriel, about people who suffer a little misfortune and how they respond. So now, good news, you get an opportunity. It's not ideal. I don't wish this for anybody else joining us tonight, but now you have an opportunity to pass 2 tests. the retake on your 7, and a test of your resiliency. And passing that second test of your resiliency, which I know you're going to do with your 69, it's not like you got blown out. So you're going to pass. I joke you went into the Series 7, the cave of the Series 7 dragon. You got a good look at him. You know, he's still in the cave. And this time, you know, you're going to slay him. Brian, your thoughts on what we should do? We get this is one of those ones we get all the time, is it not?
Yeah, we get a lot of these, and you know what FINRA's done that none of us like. You know, they're not giving us scores on each of those functions anymore. They're telling us we're adequate, we're below adequate, we're above adequate. Which essentially, you know, if it's below adequate, obviously that's your function area that you can find from the content outline, right? This is what we always do. We diagnose this thing. Also, Dean and I say this every week. Often for folks who have gotten very close, 69%, 70%, sometimes it can be not a deficit of knowledge, but your test-taking skills. Anyone who's been through my video knows that I press on this a lot. Don't overthink these questions. Answer and read the questions at face value. Don't go and change a lot of answers at the end, right? Try to keep it simple as much as you can. Answer questions on face value. Connect dots. There's not something, people oftentimes are saying, I'm missing something. There's something that's missing. No, you're not. You're looking for something that's not there is what you're doing. So that's another thing you have to worry about is test-taking skills as well.
Yeah, Brian and I are, Gabriel, probably too. I don't know, Brian, but I take a heat from our peer group, not Brian, obviously, but other people in our peer group for actually teaching test-taking tips and tricks. And, you know, I think it's worthwhile because if we can make you believe you're a better test taker, and maybe you become one as you, Gabriel, work through this, I think there's a placebo effect as well. So I do have a video on Series 7 called Tips, Tricks, and Memory Aids. So you might want to check that one out too. But I'll link, Gabriel, to both. I'll link to my video podcast, You Failed, Is It Over? With my 5 recommendations. I'll also link to Tips, Tricks, and Memory Aids. By the way, people, Brian, do you consider yourself a good test taker?
Very much so, yes.
Yeah, me too. And so when people give me grief about us telling people what could be your test taking skills and we can help you improve that, that's kind of, I guess, the bonus. We don't charge for that. It's kind of comes with the content. But, you know, when they give me grief about that, sometimes I'll call them out and say, I had an insurance guy give me a hard time. I said, listen, I know nothing about insurance. Give me the exam and I'll take it straight up just using test taking tricks. And I'd be willing to bet I'm still going to pass. Right. So if we can hopefully get you a little more confident in your test taking tricks and skills and tips, maybe that'll work it. Pass the 7 on Saturday. Woo! Diving into the 66. That really helped. All right. So, Wes, I would start with Brian and I did a podcast series on the 66 called Getting Your Kicks on the Series 66. I think, what 5 episodes, Brian?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's helped a lot of people. I'll link Wes to that. That's how I would start. I'd start by watching that podcast series on 66. Hello, Ivy. Good to see you, Ivy. I just passed 65 last Saturday. Woo! Oh, my goodness. This just hurts my heart when if you have learned or gone through our content or my practice test, there's no way you would not know test question what a quadro is. Because you would have known that Dean tells you it's on your test. But good news, you passed, so who cares? I guess I should lighten up on you, my friend Luis. That's a qualified domestic relations order. It's very testable on 65 and 66. It's an order from a judge to tell a custodian to make a non-taxable distribution to the ex-spouse. And so then they can decide what to do with it, roll it over into an IRA. Again, if they don't do that in 60 days, it would consider it to be a taxable distribution. It's definitely testable. So for those of you taking 65 or 66, please make sure you know what a quadro is. Would you add anything to that, Brian, about a quadro?
No, I have it written on my addendum. If anybody has the video course.
Good news, you passed. But what hurts our heart, Louise, is when somebody misses something we told them was on the exam and they, for whatever reason, I say, Luis, angels weep for you. We told you it's there. Right? So
4 exams. What do we call it? Four exams.
quadrophenia. So he didn't get the hat trick. He did the what is a trifecta? Would it be a quadfecta? I call the. I used to be a part owner, Brian, of a pub. I don't know if I ever told you that, and it was called Beer House in San Francisco. And we had a program that if you drank 100 beers,
Right.
We would give you a 25-ounce mug engraved with your name on it, and you could always fill it up at the happy hour price. I'm a pretty obsessive kind of a person. I did it 4 times. So, my 4th mug, I called it quadrophenia. My 3rd mug was trifecta. I had them hanging on the bar. Anyways, this young lady came in one time, and I was drinking out of my quadrophenia mug. And she goes, well, I bet you're pretty proud of that. I said, I am. I've never set a goal and met it. This was the first goal I ever set, and I met. Drinking 100 different beers, because, that's the whole point of the beer house. And she was astounded. I think she thought I was being serious. I did it 4 times. Hi, Dean and Brian. Vince in Texas here. I passed the 65. Woo! Oh, I love it. I love it. This was our plan B, Vince. I was very aggressive of telling Vince, plan B, not plan A. Plan B. Plan A is you pass your SIE, your 766 on your first attempt. That's plan A. But Vince had worked so hard, and this is Brian's point. I didn't think Vince had missed his mark because of knowledge deficit, Brian. And I told him I would be very aggressive because I thought he could pass the 65 without any more additional kind of study, except for economics, for example. And then, as a plan B, go get his 63. So kudos, Vince. The 63, same thing I told you last time, complete overlap of the law and regulations that you've already taken on 66 and 65. So you are in good shape, my friend, executing plan B. I think admission is going to be accomplished. I'd like you to do this, like I said, with your 65, Vince. I want you to do that 63 right away. I want you to be very aggressive on plan B here, getting that 63 done. Brian, what do you think of plan B? I like plan B.
I do too.
Plan A, plan B.
I've had several people go through the same thing. If they're that close, try the 65, except for the economics. It's essentially the same and less long.
You know what I think too is the way I think of Vince, you get more at bats. So even if plan B fails, you get 3 more attempts. That's right. On 63 or 65.
Right.
Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us from Hilton Head from LinkedIn. We broadcast to LinkedIn, we broadcast to Facebook, and we broadcast to YouTube. YouTube is our preferred platform. So thank you. I always warms my heart when I see somebody joining us from Facebook or LinkedIn. And so thank you for your viewership. We used to broadcast Brian to X, but then no surprise, Elon wanted some money. And I said, you know what? I'm not giving you any more money. I'm already paying you for my Starlink, so no more money for you. You already got enough money. Can you talk about Reg M? Well, Reg M is about stabilization, Carolyn. You definitely need to know about stabilizing bids, being at or below the public offering price. I thought, Carolyn, a great example of this last week was CoreWeave, where Morgan Stanley was actually stabilizing the price. And to do that, remember, they have to do that at or below the public offering price. So that's one thing I would know about it. Only can be used in firm commitment underwritings. I would know that. It has to be one person who enters the stabilizing bid. I would definitely know that. And I would know about whether you're market maker, whether you want, if it's a follow-on, whether you want to go passive or if you want to withdraw your quote. Would you add anything else to that about Reddit?
That's it. I was just going to add the passive market maker. That shows up almost all the time.
I have a video, Carolyn. If you put into the channel search bar Reg M, you'll see a 24 video that I made on that. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm one of the few channels I know of that has complete playlists for the 24. And so I haven't done this yet, Carolyn, but I'm trying to get another practice test up there. And I'm pretty sure Knopman Marks has been giving me permission to use some of their content. I already have a Kaplan one, so I'm going to try and do a Knopman Marks 24. Maybe do it with somebody. We'll see if I can get somebody to do it with me. Hello, Dean and Brian.
Why don't you and I do a podcast on the Knopman Marks 24?
We should. We should.
There
Let's
you
do that, Brian. I think we should. That would be. We've been talking about it. What should be our next podcast series?
go. Okay.
And if we want to share the glory, we could probably share the glory. I mean, Brian Marks would be happy to join us for an episode or two.
And just put it up on your YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't need it.
Marcel, one of our favorites. Woohoo! Always tell mom for low on BRF. Always. Your mom's a big fan, Marcel. She knows very few people from my YouTube channel and, tutoring and that kind of thing. And you're one of them. And the girl, Sydney is her name, but mom calls her the girl from Paris because she went to Paris and bought mom some chocolate. Mom is easy to bribe. Get her some chocolate from Switzerland and you're a fan. The Kaplan discount right on Guru 15. The discount code for Brian is Guru 20. Just took the 66. Didn't get a single ADR question. That's surprisingly. I would have expected you to get usually questions about foreign currency risk and the additional diversification that asset allocation would make you. Okay. I also had a ridiculous question that must have read 10 times, but I've worked with these in the real world and it would just not be correct. Well, listen, don't ever confuse the Series 7 Fantasyland, 67 Fantasyland, whatever, SIE Fantasyland with the real world. I always joke, at least when you test takers pass your test, you get to leave the FINRA NASAA testing Fantasyland. Brian and I are stuck here permanently. No wonder we're demented. We never get to leave. Every Tuesday night, answering the same FINRA NASAA questions about Reg M. I'm teasing, Carolyn. You didn't tell us the most important part. Did I miss this? Did you pass? Kind of like what we're talking, Luis, right? Who cares if you pass? If you missed your mark, I would tell you, hey, you be prepared for an ADR question next time. I'm kidding, but not really. Be careful for any different draw you may get because, draws can be different.
I'm not that surprised he didn't get an ADR question. There typically is not more than one anyway, and it's covered quite a bit on the Series 7.
Here's a good debrief. Question was asking, what is a qualified expense for a Coverdale? I'm surprised you even had a Coverdale questions because Coverdales suck. I mean, there's nobody nowadays that would ever use a Coverdale when you got a 529 available. Housing, food, tutoring, club sports fees. There wasn't an accept. Sounds like a weird kind of a draw, not a multiple. I would use my Sesame Street trick. One of these things is not like the other test-taking tricks we were just talking about. And I would have gone for club sports fees. What would you have gone for, Brian?
Exactly what it stood out like a sore thumb to me.
Yeah, like I'm going to go down to Nautilus and
I had a food plan in college, so I know what kind of an expense that is.
I got to tell you, I was just thinking of my own college, and it was kind of a controversy at the time. I'm dating myself. I'm a Sun Devil, Arizona State, and they were going to build into our tuition a fee to use the gym, and I forget what it was. It was like $30 or $40 or $50. I mean, in my world in those days, I come from very humble beginnings. That's a lot of money. I was thinking, why should I pay for it if I'm not using it? I was thinking it should be a revenue bond, right? The people who use the facility are the people who should have to pay for this facility, not the entire student body. I'm dating myself, Brian, but when I was a college student, we had a place called The Vine across the street from the campus. You could get a pitcher of beer for $2 and popcorn shrimp for 10 cents. And I used it as my study hall. So I'd go there, get a pitcher of beer, get some popcorn shrimp and read, do my stuff. I had kind of like a desk there. And my dad is a missionary. When he came to visit me, I didn't dawn on me that this is really not a place to take my missionary father to. And, I took him there for lunch and he was looking around. He goes, "This is a bar." And I go, you're right. I said, "But Dad, remember, Jesus's first miracle was turning water into wine. They ran out of some wine. And he said, 'Party on.'" My dad is so funny. He goes, "Well, no, but it was non-alcoholic wine." I go, "Really? Where was that in the Bible? I don't remember that part." Well, we just gave you our thoughts. Sounds like a strange draw. We didn't know whether you passed or not. If you didn't, follow those recommendations earlier. I'll link to my video episode called "You Failed, Is It Over?" No. If you passed, kudos. One additional question. I'm getting conflicting info on the timeline for the IO brochure. Do they need to send clients annually or only material change? The 90 days is to the SEC and the 120 is to the customer. So I can clear that up for you. 90 is to the SEC, 120 is to the customer. Or only material changes. Well, we can do an addendum. What's your thoughts on that one, Brian?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. There is some contradictory information between publishers, and what appears sometimes to be contradictory with some of my stuff. Now, the first part, the first half of this question was, I always teach that state IAs do not need to send annual brochures unless there's material changes.
Yeah.
But federal IAs always must send them annually. That's I don't know if the publishers are contradictory on that, but I delineate between state and federal.
Yeah, and I think you should always delineate. And Brian has some real world expertise, so too, on state versus federal. And when you have conflicting information, if it's Brian's content, feel free to reach out to Brian. I mean, every once in a while, Brian, I get somebody who takes exception to one of your questions. I go, well, don't take it up with me. Take it up with Brian. He's more than happy to explain his content to you, why he thinks the answers should be answered a certain way. And then Brian, we trust. I mean, if I had to take as much as I love Chuck Lowenstein at Kaplan, as much as I love the guys at STC, if my career is at risk, I would go with Brian. Hey, Dean and Brian, I have my 63 tomorrow. Well, like we said, you should be getting some sleep. Light studying. Okay, cool.
Good.
3 p.m. tomorrow. Tonight and tomorrow. Tonight, get some sleep. Just keep it rhythm. I don't know when you joined us, but I was telling everybody I'm an NBA fan. So I would think about a 3 p.m. game, right? I want to get to the shoot around. I want to relax. I don't want to, do anything that's going to put me at risk, right? You don't want to run the marathon before you run the marathon. So you just want to keep your pace, keep your rhythm, keep it low key, review your notes, review questions you maybe got wrong, stuff like that. Just keep it low key. Worry about 3 p.m. The other thing I would say is just be real careful about guarding your psyche and your chi. Stay away from energy vampires. If you can hide yourself in an undisclosed bunker somewhere until you actually go to the test site and do the test, I would recommend that. So avoid, contact with negative energy tomorrow. That's one of the reasons, Nor, for the rest of you, I don't think Nor's at risk. Circle back Tuesday with your testing victory, so we'll know. But that's the reason I don't like afternoon test appointments. I like the morning, less variables that can go wrong between, 7 in the morning and 10 in the morning.
Have you ever taken a late afternoon test?
Never in my life.
I never have either.
Very rarely, nor I have my brother, for example. I love him dearly, but he's one of the only persons I know that has an odd circadian rhythm. I mean, he doesn't even get going until like 11 or 12 in the afternoon. Some
people are like that. There are some people like that. Yeah,
that's right. But for him, for him, Brian, it would be ridiculous for my brother to schedule an 8 a.m. test because that's just not his rhythm, right? Exactly. So maybe that's the same with Nor. But in general, I think early AM test appointments are better than at late afternoon. Hey, a super chat. Woohoo! So we're going to have to add those up, Brian, because, you should get some of that when we go out drinking. We'll use that as our slush fund. Past the 6. All right. On the 63. All right. Working on that hat trick. All right. Love it, Christopher. Hello, everyone. I'm beginning to study for my SIE. I'm new to the channel, a bit confused on where to even start. Well, as we said, where you should start, Nathan, and I'll link it to in the video description, is with the SIE podcast series. I have an SIE podcast series. It's called Playlist 1. All of my playlists, Nathan, are organized by your series. So if you go to the channel, you go to the home page, you'll see the SIE playlist. There's 4 playlists. They're in suggested watch order. Playlist 1 is the podcast series. Playlist 2 is the SIE cram course. That's a curated videos. If you just want to watch the videos, my attempt at distillation, I'm not as good as Brian is at this, but it's the selected videos I think are must watch. Then there's the lectures. It's a huge playlist with lectures. That's playlist 3. And playlist 4 is practice, test, and practice questions. They're all, the videos in there are also in suggested watch order. So that's what I would do in terms of starting. And then Brian has got his 3-pillar process here, and I'll give it to Brian so he can show you what he thinks a process, a study plan should look like.
That's exactly right. And this process works for every single exam. There's really no variation to it. The first part is the fun part. Dean and I both refer to it as the slog. It's not the most interesting or entertaining, is getting through those textbooks. right? Some of them are far longer than the other ones, but it's vital to lay a foundation. If you're brand new in the industry, if you have very little experience with finance or investing, you got to go through the slog. You got to build that base. And you do it unit by unit, doing some practice questions after each unit. I have a inverted pyramid process that I use for that, right? So you get through all of that. Then you go to the geek and the guru, right? Because we're going to tell you about the exam. This is going to be exam tested. This probably won't. This probably will. This is probably how it looks. That's what we do. We distill all of that information from the slog to what is most testable. And as we've already mentioned, test world, not real world. We're looking at what shows up and how it shows up on the test. Once you've gone through that, then you simulate and remediate. Simulate and remediate. That's the three-part process. It's not complicated, but it's very important. Don't skip any of those parts.
Nathan, like any business or any industry, there are terms, nomenclature, vocabulary. And the nomenclature of vocabulary is very testable. If somebody told me I had to test tomorrow and I only could do one thing, I'd probably get a glossary of the terms that are being used. So Nathan, if there is a term that you don't understand, you can put that in the chat and in the channel. If you're watching one of my videos and there's a term you don't understand, you just put that in the comment section. I pride myself on responding, even though it's very difficult. We're coming up on 7 million views, Brian. Coming up on 50,000 subscribers, but I pride myself. So you can do what you're suggesting, which is, Google the term. I love the Google machine.
I use it.
But yeah, you need to lay that groundwork in the vocabulary, because the vocabulary, it's kind of like they say when you, Nathan, learn a foreign language, when you dream the foreign language, that's when you actually know it, right? So when you have your first SIE dream, that's when you know it. But the terms are, so Nathan, I guess I'll comment as a content creator for SIE. My playlist on the SIE is adequate to pass the exam, and many people do it. I don't suggest it. I'm a free supplement. But I have enough content that if you went through all that, you could pass the exam. Not suggesting it. But I make a choice not to dumb down my content. I don't go to the lowest common denominator. So Nathan, I'm pleased to be able to have this conversation with you about rising up to the level of conversation that you're going to get tested on. I don't do it intentionally. Brian doesn't do it intentionally. I love Brian tutoring because sometimes when I'm tutoring, I realize that somebody isn't understanding the vocabulary, either a test prep vendor or myself, because, we use that vocabulary all the time. Nathan, I told you my family gets upset with me because I use that vocabulary even outside the securities industry. I'll go in and say, I want to do an opening purchase. Or today I told Mom I'm short a couple tutoring sessions, so she'll have to go to town by herself, right? So it is like learning a foreign language. I do believe in Googling those terms, flashcards, there's Quizlet. I think you should make your own. I don't think, Brian, do you have glossary in your PDFs?
I do not. Again, most of the publishers have all of those.
I'm with you.
I just don't want to reinvent the wheel.
I'm with you. So Nathan, I love the questions. So remember, what I love about good questions like yours, Nathan, is this is what buys you goodwill with me, at least, and I would think Brian as well. That buys you goodwill that we will remember who you are. We will remember your struggle. And if you in my comments say, Dean, this is a term, I call it explication, another big word. I'm more than happy to provide that additional help to you. So let's make sure we get you through this, Nathan. You deserve to get the P, and we'll do what we can to do on our end to help you with that vocabulary. Nathan, I'll just comment one more comment. One of my favorite students over the last couple of years, Brian, can you imagine this? Her native language, Nathan, is Mandarin. And I was laughing, and she thought I was laughing at her. And I said, no, I'm laughing with you. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, because she was telling me that, Nathan, she was putting these terms into a Google translator and no equivalent Mandarin word would come up. And she said, why do you think that's funny? I said, because I don't think this is in English to begin with. So part of your skill set, Nathan, on your first leg of your testing journey is to be able to read the question and even understand what they're asking you. And sometimes I've had to say to people, okay, we need to do more work because you're not reading this question and even understanding what it's asking or understanding the answer sets that are being offered to you. That's kind of where you're at, Nathan. Is kind of what Brian just discussed, the slog. You're in the slog right now. And when you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death, you got to keep walking, right? So don't let it get you bogged down, I guess is the other thing I would say. The frustrations, keep moving forward, keep matriculating down the field into scoring positions. So I'm simpatico with you, and we'll do our whatever we can do to help you with that.
You know, Dean, even when I'm reading a novel, you're always coming across vocabulary. You know, I've been reading almost as long as I've been alive.
Yeah.
And some of those authors just love to use these obscure terms. And I just used a Google machine. And my wife and I, because she's actually a published author,
right?
And we text each other back and forth. I just saw this word in this book, and you know what it means? You know, we do it all the time. And that's how you learn, man.
Yeah. And by the way, I would tell you, Nathan, I'm guilty of that. I never knew, Nathan, I had haters until I was on social media. And then I probably had them. I just didn't know they were out there. And I am accused of intentionally trying to use big words to make people think I'm smart. Not true. I use the word that I think is appropriate to what I'm discussing. And so, as I said, I don't apologize for that because I do think part of it is rising up. Brian, when I read those books with those big words, I say, oh, a learning opportunity.
Exactly.
You know, I'll learn a new word, you know. Complete the hat trick. All right. Woo!
Man, that must feel
good. I would add to that. For some people, that's different. I kind of think the 7 is more, but we do know, Brian and I know people that don't struggle on a 7 do struggle on a 66. So everybody's journey is a little different. Yeah, so I just don't want people to think that the 7 is definitely the hardest because, you know, we know people who you should have a pep in your step once you pass your 7. But treat every exam with respect because we know, Brian, those people who really do struggle on 66.
That's right. And you know what? I have to agree with him. I think, again, it depends upon your draw. I think a lot of that 66 stuff is point and click. But to Nathan's point, a lot of it's vocabulary or ambiguous synonyms, right? It's still vocabulary. Yeah. But a lot of it is definitional, right?
When I think that I tell people the 7, so here's the one I get grief on, Keaton. Every testing journey is unique. But when I take some heat is when I tell people I think the 65 is one of the most difficult exams, right, particularly for people coming from some different profession. And here's where I think the 7 makes some sense, where the 66 does not. The 7 does have a narrative thread to it. You know, it starts with, can you find a customer? Can you open an account? Can you make an investment? What happens afterwards? And that's completely missing on NASA exams. There is really no narrative thread through a NASA exam. So it's here, then it's over here, and then it's over there. You know, it's all over the place. Yeah. I don't know what the LOL was, but you know. Hi, Dean. Grant from Tampa, 6 next Thursday. Thanks for all your work. Well, thank you, Grant. We work pretty hard trying to help test takers. It's very gratifying, all the test taking victories that Brian and I contribute to. You do the work, but, you know, I've always thought, Brian, our business is pretty simple. If we help people pass the test, they're happy. And if they give us referrals, I think what's made our channel number 1 is the contributions we make to testing victories. And then the referrals from this victorious test takers. So we're more than happy to do the work. I had a guy who was training, Brian. I used to be a senior person of the management team at Kaplan. At the time I was hiring this new instructor, Brian, and he said, well, how important is it that people pass their test? Here you go, Nathan. Here's another big word for you. I said, it's the sine qua non. Nathan, that's Latin for it. It's the most essential thing. Right.
I was just going to say, it's not English, man.
Can you talk about block orders? And the other RR on the same D, placing them even as a place with a separate RR. Okay. Michael, I'm not sure what exam you're taking. If you're taking a 24 or a 57, I think the issue would be about a block order is we can't front run on the block order. You know, several firms have been accused of having a block order where an institutional investor or the issuer, for example, wants to, sell some stock or do something. And we know that if they're going to be selling the stock, it's probably going to have a negative impact on the price. Block orders are typically not done through the market center. They're not done through the NASDAQ market center, the New York market center. They're done off the trading platform, and then we report to the tape. Can you talk about any other RR at the same DD placing them, even if it's in place with a separate? I'm not quite sure I understand, Michael, what that part of your question's about.
Yeah.
We should never be doing, fictitious trade. So, if all we're doing is buying and selling through the same firm to create the false impression volume, that's a huge violation. I'm not sure that you're talking about painting the tape. By the way, I think, Michael, you look really good, man. I always love a gentleman who can tie a tie, has it properly hanging. So I love that. Michael, as I recall, I think you're taking the 24. I think we've joined us before, and that would be helpful. And then remember, Michael, you could always send me an email at dean@guruexamprep.com and show me what you're actually looking at and give me a little more specificity, and I'd be more than happy to help. Your thoughts, Brian, based on that?
Yeah, it's difficult to interpret that statement. I'm trying to make sense of it, but I just can't.
Okay. So just to give us more clarification, either in the chat, Michael, or with the email. Taking 6-3 end of the month. I love it. Ichabod Crane, Washington Irving. We're going to start playing trivia quizzes on our channel. Are you familiar with the legend of Sleepy Hollow, Brian?
Absolutely.
You must be from upstate New York. Are you from upstate New York? Are you a Knickerbocker? That would be my guess. Taking the 63 at the end of the month. Dean, you're absolutely nailed the test taking tips. I used all in the past. All right. Woo!
Past the 65.
I'm going to ring the bell for me.
Oh, don't drop it.
Oh, hey.
That's an important bell.
Yeah. Well, because I moved from Vegas to Off Grid Run, I got 2 of everything. Because I had a duplicate studio in Vegas, right? So I got 2 bells. If you need anything, mics or whatever, I got duplicates of everything.
I could have used a microphone last week.
There you go. There you go. 64 the third time. Hakeem. All right. Oh, my favorite Hakeem is Hakeem Olajuwon. And I feel so bad that Houston didn't get it done. I thought they were going to get done, but I thought Duke was going to get it done. I got a 64 to 6 first time. Thought I knew the material. Got 80% on Kaplan. That is surprising. Very surprising. You need another practice exam. Go to the 6 playlist on my channel. Brian's been kind enough to allow us to show you his practice test. There's also a Kaplan. We use Kaplan already. I think I have a Notman Series 6. So look at those other questions. Get another test prep vendor. And maybe Brian's 6 materials. I think you need another voice. If you're getting 80 and then you got a 64, I think you need a new voice. Your thoughts, Brian?
Yeah, it's way too much variance.
Yeah, I'm with you. So that means, we don't know what the variance is caused by. And I think Kaplan's a great vendor. But that being said, we need to, ditch Kaplan and get a new voice. Can you believe that, Brian? Did you see that? They fired Michael Malone from the Denver Nuggets coaching.
Yeah, I saw it this afternoon.
So, team, talk about a different voice. They said Nikola, the Joker, was on board with this, and they said his voice was no longer speaking to the players.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, okay. So the Marine in me kind of doesn't like that because he's kind of a Marine kind of guy. He likes to scream and yell, and at some point, the young men probably say, enough. So get a different voice. Just past 7 yesterday. Woo! As for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for Rick, victorious test taker. In the movie It's a Wonderful Life, Rick, Clarence is the angel. I don't think he's an angel. He's an apprentice, right? He's trying to get his wings.
Angel third class.
Angel third class. And when there's a bell in the movie, they say that's an angel getting their wings. So our version of that is for victorious test takers. Well said, Dean. It's good saying. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part. I like it. It's negative feedback. Failure. The way I think of it, Yasha, is failure is the negative feedback you need to change course and direction. Right? You got to change course if what you're doing is not working. And that's part of one of my recommendations. I have 5 of them, and that's one of them. I just gave him a recommendation, and I told him the recommendation was he needs to change course with a different prep vendor. So what you got to do is sit down and say, okay, what can I do differently? You don't want to continue to do the same study plan and execute the same study plan if that's what led to you missing your mark. You got to give thought. Do you need to add a supplement like Brian, for example, or do you need to dig into the channel a little more? What do you need to do to change it up?
I don't know one honorable, successful person who hasn't met some failure somewhere along the line.
Yeah,
it's just part of the success process.
Brian, have you met men and women who are so incredibly fragile because they have never suffered any kind of a negative event, and then they get their first one, which for most people wouldn't be a big deal, right, and they just completely collapse? And so I'm with you, Brian. I think it builds character, so to speak. We're not wishing, negative events, but
not the point. Yeah,
but yeah, I'm with you, Brian. I had a friend of mine, and her husband lost his job, and he's never had that before. And she was telling me that she's upset because he won't take jobs for $200,000 because he was making $300,000. And she said, Dean, I can't get him to understand. He needs to take a step back to take a step forward. And, he's not responding well. I said, well, it doesn't sound like he's had many reverses. And, this may be his first one.
And you and I come from fairly humble beginnings.
Yeah.
So we kind of know what going through the travails is to get to the success point that we're at now.
Yeah. Brian and I believe that a lot of people don't realize that the problem they're articulating to us is a champagne problem. A champagne problem is a problem that isn't really a problem. For example, Brian, my favorite one recently, I had a test taker on the channel who said he doesn't like the channel because he's got to watch all of the ads. I said, well, that's au contraire, my friend. You don't have to watch all the ads. In fact, I don't like watching ads either. For $20 a month, 20 something, you can get rid of the ads. And if you're going to be a 6-month testing journey on my channel, 6 times 20, that's $120. And you don't have to watch any commercials. My tutoring is $275 an hour. So it's a great savings and you should do that. And then he said to me, he goes, well, I guess I'll suffer. I said, man, my friend, if in your world suffering is that you have to watch commercials on a YouTube channel, then you are very, very blessed, because there are people in the world that have real problems. And then I told him that was a champagne problem. And he said, what's a champagne problem? I go, it's a problem that really isn't a problem. It's a first world problem that Brian and I, our humble beginnings, didn't have to deal with.
Right.
We had to deal with, do I have enough money to put $5 in the tank to get me to my, my next gig? Can you go over record keeping requirements for BDs? I certainly can. You can also put this in the channel search bar. Very few records of a broker dealer are a lifetime. Very few are 6. The vast majority are 3. All records have a 2-year ready access rule. For IAs, the records are 5 with a 2-year ready access. What do you think, Brian? Should we go over the lifetime records?
No.
Okay.
For the Series 63, I don't think it's worth the time.
Yeah, I love how Brian pays attention to that. Where I was going to give you spam as a memory aid device, but put record retention in the channel search bar. There's a lecture I have, and you can watch it. Brian, what are your thoughts? I gave you the
exactly. For the 63, they're not going to get into too much of the record keeping. Series 7, there's a couple of 65, 66, there's 1 or 2, but the 63 really isn't a big deal. And, I always remember the 5 and 3 rule for IAs and broker dealers. And no one has come out crying spilled milk over the record keeping requirement.
Yeah, I'm with you, Nor. If you tell us you missed the record retention, we're going to say, exactly. What I will do, Nor, is I will link in the video description and comments my little lecture on record retention. Yeah. Would you add, Brian, on 63 money laundering records or 5 years or not?
I don't think so.
Okay, no. I'm with you.
No.
This is a question of Rick. Rick, if you're still in the house, Victoria's Test Taker, Rick in the house. By the way, Rick, thank you so much. It's so good for morale to buck others up when a Victoria's Test Taker, an alum, comes into the channel with the report of their victorious victory on the exam. We so appreciate it. So always feel welcome to join us any live stream I'm ever doing or whatever. Feel free. So, Rick, if you're still here, Reese, if you could respond to him, please do so. By the way, you might want to join Baby Broker is doing hat tricks, Reese, because we do have chats where test takers are talking to each other, victorious test takers, and forming study groups. It might be, I don't know. I'm trying to Reese, turn this into more of a community on the YouTube page, but YouTube isn't as conducive to community as Reddit or Facebook. So maybe go over there to either a Reddit or a
And
Facebook.
Reese, remember, there's no one set answer for everyone. Also.
That's right. That's true.
No one size
That's
fits
true.
all.
Right on, Brian.
Anybody
Every
who
situation is unique.
4 to 6
Cast
weeks,
question.
6 to 8 weeks. It's,
Reese,
everyone's a little different.
Cast question. No blanket recommendations.
Exactly.
Everybody's got a unique situation. Got to tell me about your situation. Full-time study or part-time study.
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Are you a tabula rasa, another Latin term, blank slate? And you know nothing, and you're out of college, you got no family, you can spend 40 hours a week studying. Or my favorite, man, are you a single mom and you're studying at 4 a.m. to 8 a.m.? Ugh. And still passes. By the way, I have less empathy for people.
Right. While walking the dog and cooking breakfast for the kids before they go.
Yeah. 6 weeks. There you go. Thanks, Rick, for letting us know. Man, look at Rick. I love our people's avatars. Mine sucks. Look at that smile on him, man. I don't know if I'd want an avatar with a smile like that, because then you were having a bad day. People say, hey, Rick, look at that smile. That's $1 million smile for sure. Take the SIT 24 on April 23rd. I'd love to see. Well, Carolyn, send me an email, dean@guruexamprep.com. I charge a lot of money for shared screens, so I'm not committing to this, but I may do it with you just so we can get some content on the channel. The deal would be if I can get Brian Marks and Ahmed Marks to give me a 24 and you and I could do it together and we could put it on the channel, maybe I'd be willing to do that with you just to get some more content. No promises, but send me an email at dean@guruexamprep.com, and then I'll use that as fodder to get Brian to give me permission to do that. That's Brian Marks. This is Brian Lee. Brian Marks is different than Brian Lee. Yeah. Brian Marks is so not a test geek. They are a very formal, straight-laced, in a good sense of the word. For 66, know that negative for the beneficiary is irrevocable. Oh, there you go. I like it. Great feedback. So you can't change the beneficiary on transfer and death. I've never known that. I didn't even know that myself, Keaton. Did you know that, Brian?
No, know that negative for
I didn't know you knew that was true.
The beneficiary designation is irrevocable. What does it mean by know that negative for TOD account?
Well, it's a disadvantage to a TOD is the way I read that.
There you go.
All right, Courtney. Somebody joining us from Facebook. All right, I told you our preferred platform is YouTube, but we do broadcast to Facebook and LinkedIn, so I always like confirmation that, yes, we are live on those platforms. No offense, but I never want to see you again. Okay, she understood. I like it. Courtney, I say that I come into your life for a reason and a season. The reason is to pass your exam. The season is how long it takes to do that. So it looks like our reason and our season is over. Nothing wrong with that. It is what it is. I have, Courtney, people who's unsubscribed from the channel. And, I don't think she takes offense to that. Brian and I don't take offense to that. Hey, but Brian, along the way, don't we meet some great people who still, even after our reason and season over, become either our significant other, like Stacy? I'm joking. or people in our life. I worked with a guy for a whole month to pass his 24. He's such a nice guy. And so we understand we're in your life for that reason in that season. So, Courtney, you don't have to leave us, but we get it. We get it. It's one of the reasons, Brian, I can't get Google to understand. Google's on me all the time. YouTube is a subsidiary of Google. And the YouTube people are always reaching out to me to sell channel memberships. And, maybe someday maybe coffee cups or whatever. I said, well, no, my channel's a little different because the people come to me for a reason, a season. And so the channel is seasonal. It's not we're not going to have, of our 6 million views, 2 million of them are now making money in the securities industry. And Courtney, I love that about what we do. I always joke, if you're in the securities industry, if you are poor, as Brian and I were, and you deserve to be rich, like Brian and I deserve to be rich, there's no better industry than the securities industry. So it's wonderful to see people taking these licenses, these registrations, and providing help to their clients as well as providing for themselves and their family. Richard, I do have that on the channel, and I just have been putting up. I did a tutoring session on 24, Richard.
24 tonight.
Yeah, well, I invite 24s. I have the Reddit for 24. I don't know if that's where Richard's coming from, Brian. I do have a limit order protection video, as well as various videos this week I've been releasing from a tutoring session I did. So I'm going to go over it briefly here because we're coming up on our hour. In fact, we're a little over. But I say it this way, Richard. When a customer, I'm a market maker. My bid is 15. My ask is 16. Can you use your whiteboard, Brian?
I can. I was just thinking the same thing.
Okay. Can you put a bid and an ask up there? Put a bid of 15 and an ask of 16, please.
Yeah.
So, Richard, what I usually say is that the customer's market order would be on the opposite side of my quote. And where most 24 test takers get messed up is they're outside looking in instead of looking inside looking out. Brian, could you put on the size 8 by 7, please? So, Richard, we were talking to Nathan earlier about this. It's kind of like learning a foreign language once again, right? So when you look at this quote, what you should be saying is, okay, as a market maker, Dean is willing to buy 8 round lots, 800 shares into my inventory at 15. I'm willing to sell 700 shares out of my inventory at 16. So customer market order, pretty simple. Customer says, Dean, I want to sell 800 shares in the market. I fill them at 15. Okay, now the customer says, Dean, I want to buy. It's not the customer's job, Richard, to know that he's giving me a limit order. He says, Dean, I want to buy it at 15.10. And I say, Richard, 15.10 right now is not available because, if you want to buy, it's 16. So now I look at my quote. I say, Richard, you're willing to pay more for the stock than I am. Right. So when we have that limit now, we go look at my quote and say, is my customer willing to pay the same price or better than I am? And now the customer is willing to pay more than me. And then limit order protection means I have to display that. So now I'm going to change my quote to 15.10. And again, it depends, Richard, how many shares you want to sell. Let's just say, Brian, the customer, let's do it in test phrase already. A market maker is displaying the following: a bid of 15 and ask of 16. The market maker receives a customer buy for 500 shares at 15.10. Which of the following is true? And then what you're looking for the updated display is now I'm going to change the quote to 15.10, and it's going to be 500 shares available. Now it looks like Dean is willing to buy 500 shares in my inventory. I'm not. I'm displaying my customer limit order. Now, if it's the same price, one more point, Richard. If it's the same price as mine, then I display it. And if it was 5 at 15, it would be now 8 plus 5 would be 13. And then my minimum obligation going forward is to do for the customer at least what I'm going to do for myself, right? So I joke, Richard, from the Midwest, you can struggle on 24. It's not what's the right thing. It's what's my minimum obligation. And my minimum obligation is to do for at least the customer whatever I'm going to do for myself. I apologize for rambling. One more point. I can't pretend I didn't receive this order. And the limit order protection rules applies going forward. So if I do 300 for me and 300 for the customer, then I still have that obligation on the remaining. And again, the other rule here about limit order protection is that's my minimum obligation moving forward, right? Yeah. I think that's pretty good for this kind of a venue, Brian.
It's a tough concept to do in this kind of context, and it does show up on the test.
Please. So one other thing Richard, Carolyn, I don't want to send out negative vibes, but people who struggle on 24, and I'd be interested to see what Brian thinks about this, is usually people who come from a packaged product background. Like they work at American Funds or Franklin Templeton or T. Rowe Price, and they roll out some product that requires 7s, and all the people had 6s, and now they got to take 7s, and now the people supervising got to take 24s. And this banking and the trading are not something that they're familiar with.
That's right.
And so you want to overlearn those two topics. The trading guys and the banker guys, they struggle with like retail parts like IRAs and stuff, but it's not enough to kill them. So make sure you overlearn or try to do that. And then my last, as I said, Richard, I'm dripping out a lot of these types of questions over this week from a tutoring session I did last week. I only put tutoring session replays with permission. So everybody should know on my channel, there's nobody there who has not given me permission to put their mug up there with me. This guy, great guy. Hey, you're listening. Thank you so much. But in his case, he said, Dean, I don't want my business out there, so I want to keep it private. So I've been using the questions we did in the tutoring session as videos, and I'm putting those out. I got about 4 or 5 more coming. All right, we're getting to the drawing. Phil Kaplan, practice final, was taking 60 steps to cancel. Ugh. Cody, I don't like the cancellation because it gives you an artificial sense of urgency. So I don't believe that's best practice, but it is what it is. You've done that. So now get that test date. And if I were your corporate trainer, I'm not. I'd say, Cody, whatever date we now pick, we got to stick with it. We're not moving it again. We're going to go into the cave. We're going to do battle with the dragon. Outcome is the outcome, right? Your thoughts on that, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. 71 is just too close.
Too close to not take the test and be done with it, right? So I would have encouraged you to take the test. Well, third attempt, I get that because you got to stick on the date.
Yeah, that was a little late coming in.
That makes some sense.
That makes a little difference.
You're welcome. Start at Fidelity next week. Fidelity's a great course. Fidelity is kind of like Knopman Marks, Nathan, a little too straight laced for me. Great firms, great people. Great firm. But I for a year, they used to have a division at Fidelity called Spartan. And I, for a year, traveled to the World Trade Center in Boston to teach 9s and 10 classes for that division of Fidelity. As much as I love them, I said, listen, guys, I'm not a long-term solution to your training. You know, I don't want to be a trainer, corporate trainer. That's not my gig. You got to find somebody. 7 is much more in depth and judgmental. I have a finance degree. Okay, well, cool. Okay, I think it's like we're at the end. So, Brian, yeah, when you join us, I always give Brian, oh, well, look at that. We got some stuff still going on. I apologize. I'm going to go quick because we want to get to the drawing. I love it. Good. Past the 65 yesterday. Alex, man, all these pretty people. Look at Brian's hair, Alex's haircut there. That's beautiful. Beard, high and tight, like with the Marines. That would pass inspection in the Marine Corps, the high and tight. The beard would not pass inspection, but the high and tight certainly would. I love that. Love that. Yuma, Arizona. You're down right down there in the Marine Corps Air Base, right there in Yuma. That's 24 content. Wow, we got a lot of 24s tonight, don't we, Brian?
Yep.
So, Brian, I think I got Derek on the hook. I think I got Brian on the hook. I think for Brian and I to do a 24 podcast.
Oh, that'd be great.
I think we're going to do
we're going to do the Knopman Marks test if we can.
Yeah. So, let's get some more 24 content out there. Seems pretty memory intensive. I call it a barbell, Derek. A barbell meaning that 24 is a combination of minutia and judgment with nothing in between. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, that's pretty much. Yeah.
So,
I'd have some more comments to it, but we're running a little late.
Okay, let's see. Let's get to the end here. Motivation and information. Yeah, you're not alone, Bob. Come every Tuesday night. Join the community. Join one of our other communities on Facebook or Reddit. Make sure. I think it's hard to, because of COVID and the current state of affairs we live in, I think it's harder because we used to have more. Some people still do this. We have a cohort where we're all studying together. If we have a bad day, we can go to lunch or go to the bar and buck each other up, and not so much anymore. So come Tuesday, get to see victorious test takers in the house, ask questions. So make this a part of your study plan. Make our Tuesdays a part of your study plan. Variable annuities on 7, just basic concepts, good debrief.
I heard that too. I think
variable annuities, we undersell it sometimes, and then people get a lot of it. 30 days when the admin approves for all your efforts. What is the registration point? Active. I don't know about the 30 days. It's noon of the 30th day.
Right.
And I would never use the word approve. The word is effective. There's 2 nasty words we never use in the securities industry. Those 2 words are approve and guarantee.
Exactly.
So we say effective. All right, going pretty quick. There you go. Thanks for showing love, Michael. We appreciate it. Ends it out. Please understand that Keaton's giving some good, paying it forward with some good debrief. You're definitely going to get asked questions about contrasting on all exams, the difference between a traditional open-end mutual fund and an ETF. All is well, Isaac. All is well. Okay, please don't put any more thing in the chat because we can call it a night here.
Let's do it.
We're 65. We haven't done that, Lane. Send me an email, dean@guruexamprep.com. I'll try and put something up. How can I ask questions about the SIE? Well, then you ask them. It's a little late. We're an hour and 9 minutes into it. I apologize if you got backed up on the queue. I don't know when your test date is, but join us next Tuesday. You can. I'll put up the link tonight. Put your questions in tonight, and next Tuesday we'll start with you at the front of the line answering your questions. And if you're watching my videos, just put it in the comments, and I respond all the time. All right, woohoo! All right, Brian, what's the word? You already got it up there, please?
No, I don't. No, I don't. This is a shout out to the.
No, well, hold on, Brian. Hold on. Do not.
I'm not writing anything.
Okay. So wait till I get the Wheel of Fortune up before you do that, so people will start putting it in there.
That's right. I just wanted to do a shout out to the gal at the TOD.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
All right. So let's boom. Okay. Now, if you are going to participate in the chat, please wait until I put don't write right now what Brian's going to put up there, because I won't do it till I get it. So, Brian, what is the word for tonight for the drawing? Tulip. Why is it tulip? Oh, because of tulip mania?
Skagit County, Washington, north of Seattle, has the Tulip Festival this week.
Oh, I thought it was going to be like the Dutch tulip mania. I thought it was going to be the madness of crowds, and it's just really about flowers. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, so if you would like to participate in our drawing for the coaching call, please put tulip into the chat, and I will go get our screen, and we'll see who wins the coaching call. Hold on. Boom. Let's get rid of that. And remember, if you win the coaching call, then you just go to deantenneytutoring.setmore.com. You hit the class tab. You'll see the coaching call for weekly drawing winners. All right, we got 12 entries. Anybody else want to participate? We don't want to overstay our welcome ever, but we're at an hour and 11 minutes, and I believe in having a firm start and ending time. But Brian, we did have a lot of 24s tonight.
Yes, we did.
And I'm thinking about not maybe every week, but maybe every other Thursday. Maybe we have like a live stream just for 24s and 9s and 10s. Get some more content for those folks. I'll put it out there when you and I can talk backstage about it. All right, everybody ready? Let's get rid of Brian and I. Boom. Okay, here we go. Marcel, if you win, my God, you're just going to be tacking it on to you're already winning. So, oh, maybe Marcel left us. I don't see him in the drawing. Michael, perfect. Love that, Michael. Anybody deserves that. It's Michael, I'm going to make you a special deal. I think you're 24. So send me an email. I don't want you getting a normal coaching call. I think you actually deserve your own personalized kind of a thing. So you can claim that coaching call if you want with the Dean Tenney Tutoring class tab. I would prefer, Michael, that you send me an email at dean@guruexamprep.com, and we come up with a date and time where you and I can do our own thing unique to whatever your situation is. So your choice. You can either just take the plain vanilla version, or you can send me an email and we'll work out something. Okay, stop sharing. Let me get Brian and I back up there. Let's get rid of this. All right. As I always say, inch by inch, your exam's a cinch. Yard by yard, your exam is hard. Brian, first time ever, had somebody in social media say, what does that mean?
Keep it simple. Stay with what you know. You take the test. Don't let the test take you.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday, 5 p.m. Arizona time. Bye-bye.